Well, welcome to a different video, different area as well, not the best area. And it might sound weird because I got a mental ulcer on my tongue. Perfect position, so when I talk, especially in English, it canes. You have to forgive me for my weird voice, but this is the season I get them. It is now rainy season in Japan. It's about to pour down. I got myself my coffee, my snack, which is Kamado Wagashi, Japanese sweet, amazing. Okay, so today's video is kind of an extension on I don't know if you can hear that. People going mental outdoors. I wonder if you can hear that. Anyway, it's like an extension on my fighting games video because I have a request by a viewer. They are getting into fighting games and they want to know any advice, because when you look at advice and getting into fighting games, it's always from someone who's a pro. And there is some helpful stuff like there, but it's good to hear from someone who's a complete beginner and how they got into it, because the initial break into fighting games is such a hard step to get into. You just don't know where to start because of all the how complicated the systems are. If you actually look into it, you actually want to learn a fighting game and not just spam buttons and just hope for the best. Like, when you like a fighting game but you're not actually getting into it, your initial approach, what everyone does, is first, when you're a kid, you just spam buttons and hope you get through. And then when you start getting into one you like, the next step is normally find the character you like, their moveset. It's not always you like them because of their moveset, it's you like them because you like the character design. That's normally what happens. You gravitate towards your favourite character design and pick that. And then you just learn a few combos, like basic combos, and you just now and again, you'll spam. And then sometimes you think, what I do is I'll use a combo I know, and I'll spam again, and you kind of mix that in, just to make it look like you know what you're doing. And usually, when you start doing that, you can beat people who are absolute beginners and not really playing to learn. Anyone who just spams, you can beat them with that extra little bit of learning. But when you want to get into fighting games properly and understand it, and actually understand and unlock your true potential of how fun a fighting game can be, it's a completely different approach. But it took me so long. But the main thing I would say is you're not playing it to beat it. So when you do a session, like when I go, well, I'm going to play a fighting game today, and I do like 3 credits or something, my goal isn't to beat it. That's not the reason you're playing it. The reason you're playing it is not to beat the fighting game and beat the boss and do it really well, because you're playing it because you enjoy the system, the combat. So you're playing it just to play the fighting game. So I don't have this goal in mind that if I don't beat it, what's the point? I'm no good. When you're starting to get into fighting games, you're just playing it to enjoy it and to learn. So don't have this idea that I'm going to beat it and I'm going to try and beat it. Because if you're trying to play it to beat arcade mode, for example, and you get to like the second to last stage and you're using loads of continues and you can't get past this boss, and it makes you feel like I'm doing crap, because you're just constantly continuing against like the second to last stage and you can't beat it, and it just feels like you get nowhere. So I don't recommend doing that, because it actually puts your, how can I say, oh my god, my English is dying. It makes you just like think that you can't get anywhere. I can't think of the word. My god, my English is bad, and it. Living in Japan makes you start to forget your own mother tongue. It'll come back to me. It's a really obvious word as well. That's good. Anyway, so how I approached fighting games and started getting into them. Now I'm not trying to be a pro player, but I want to learn it. I'm not playing them every day, because that can burn it. You don't burn out. You don't want to go, right, I'm going to train every day and get good, because you can get burnt out from doing that. Unless you're really enjoying it, but I'm rotating my games. my skill games. If you're not rotating your skill games though, then yeah, you could do a bit every day. But because I'm going between shmups, twin stick shooters, and fighting games, I'm rotating them. I don't play a fighting game every day, but when I do my fighting game, I do that every day until I reach my goal, and then I go to my next skill game. But what you want to try and do is find a fighting game. Well, the first thing is what do you want to focus on, because you've got 3D fighters, you've got 2D fighters, you've got arena fighters, and they're all different. And I don't think you should really go in between them at first, because that really will confuse you. You don't want to do that. You want to just stick with one type and get really good at that type, and then move on to another one. Because if you're going to switch between different genres of fighting games, you're not going to you're just going to get confused with the system. So I'm focusing on 2D fighters at the moment. So I haven't touched a 3D fighter for a while now. I would like to get back into 3D fighters like Dead Alive and Virtual Fighter and stuff like that, but I want to focus on 2D fighters because they're more simplified. Well, they are in some ways, they're both different, because 2D fighters tend to have more buttons, like fight, 3 punches, 3 kicks, so that's more complicated, but it's just 2D movement. But I recommend you just just casually play a few 2D fighters and find one that you really get attracted to and you really like, and then focus on that one. If you want to just learn, what I did is I went back to Street Fighter 2 to learn the basics, which isn't a bad thing, but it's not great because Street Fighter 2 has some, I don't know if it's just me, but the inputs are not as good. It's harder to do certain inputs on Street Fighter 2 than doing it on Street Fighter 3 or 0. Like doing the Shuriken is much harder than doing it on the later games. I think they've made the inputs easier in the later games. So I don't necessarily recommend starting from Street Fighter 2, even though it's the most simple because it hasn't got all these mechanics built into it. Things like bars and gauges. I feel like you should start, if you want to go from early on, start from 0, because 0 seems to be a polished version of 2. And then you might go back to 2 if you want it, but that's my experience. So the first 2 things you want to think about is what kind of fighting game you want to focus on. Look, the person who has requested this video is probably playing Street Fighter 6, and that's kind of, I haven't played Street Fighter 6 yet, but I've heard it's really good, and I think it's like a really good way to attract new players to fighting games, the way they've done it with like the story mode and that's probably why. So you could stick with that if you're playing that at the moment and use Street Fighter 6 as your main game, which is fine. I'm just going through the old ones. Because Street Fighter 6, all the core mechanics are the same, just added on like stuff, but it's still like Street Fighter. And Street Fighter is the most balanced and polished fighting game, so it's probably the best way to start fighting games just because it's the best well-made fighting game. It just is. I don't recommend, well, if you're going for classic ones, I don't recommend old school Mortal Kombat games, they're awful. Mortal Kombat 1 is a terrible game, but oh my god, it's just so bad. But I haven't played the later ones, but I know they're a lot better. I do want to play Mortal Kombat because I do like the series, like the theme. I'd like to get into that, but they're not as complex as in Street Fighter and nowhere near. Capcom seems to be much better. They're like the godfathers of fighting games. So I focus on, say, Street Fighter, and then don't focus on trying to beat it. So I don't know what if you're playing Street Fighter 6, I don't know what modes it's got. If it's got arcade mode, I have no idea. I don't know what the difficulty is like, because I'm playing the arcade versions, and the arcade versions of old Street Fighter are a lot harder than the console versions from what I know of. Is just doing the easiest difficulty on Street Fighter 2 arcade is really hard, and I still haven't beaten it, I don't think. No, I've only beaten the SNES version, because the SNES port is easier, but I have not beaten Street Fighter 2 yet, but I've moved on, because my goal isn't to beat it in one continuum. I think it's just to learn and get better fighting games and enjoy it. And my recent fighting game is Darkstalkers, which I did actually do 1 CC somehow. It was mental. I don't know how I did that, because the second to last character I got stuck on for a long time, and then suddenly one day I just beat him and beat the final boss in one go. It was crazy. It's because I'm applying new techniques. And what you want to do when you're learning fighting games, because there's so many. If you're looking up a basic guide how to get into fighting games and what to learn, there is quite a lot of basic rules to learn, but it's still overwhelming trying to learn it all. So the way I've approached it is that when I do a session of fighting game, I focus on one technique only and not trying everything else. And I think the two main things you need to focus on before doing anything else is learning guarding properly, how to guard correctly, and not just be offensive all the time. Being a defensive player is very important. Know when to be offensive and defensive. Wait for your turn. Learn that. And secondly, just learn movement and how do I say it? Execution. That's it. Learning how to execute and never spam buttons. Never keep pressing. For example, if you're going to, I think I've said this on my previous video, but if you're going to do Street Fighter, just be Liu because he's the most basic, and when you focus on like special moves like Hadouken and stuff like that, when you do Hadouken, you don't want to keep spamming the punch. So Hadouken is like a quarter circle or a punch. You don't want to keep spamming the punch and do a quarter circle. That's really bad practice and bad habits. You don't need to keep spamming that button. You're going to put extra inputs which you don't need. Game is well made. It knows when you only get one input. So you don't ever spam like most people do it. You just do it once. You do your quarter circle on one button. That's really neat. Don't spam it. So I'll try and convince yourself to make yourself overconfident. Just do it. If you do that, it feels better as well. You feel like you actually execute well. So you need to fix that bad habit. Even sometimes now, I sometimes accidentally keep spamming off of it because it's just built in. And when you play fighting games so long in that way, it's really hard to get out of that. That you need to fix that quickly. Also, spam the button doing the inputs perfectly. When you do like a 3-hit combo, like 3 punches, like 1 punch, kick, punch, kick, you just do 1, 2, kick. You want to get that execution. Don't press the button more than you need to fix that. It's a major thing. But you also want to focus on just basic attacks. Don't focus on trying to learn combos now. You're still learning. I would say that what I first did was I played as Liu and I learned Hadouken, shooting, and coming in with a spinning kick. And what I tried to do is I didn't focus on doing combos, like basic combos, I just focused on doing punch and kick, and then when I think I can do it, or I can do a special move like Hadouken to try and get it in. That's a really big mistake, more complex than it should be. I've changed my plan now and how I do it. What I do now is I have a training goal. So when I do a session of a fighting game, the way I approach it is different every time to learn. So, for example, if I'm going to play it now, I say, right, I'm going to do a session and I'm only going to use heavy punch and heavy kick, and that's all I'm going to do. And focus on guard practice. And I'm only going to use those 2 attacks. Because then you're not overcomplicating it, and you can just focus on reading the enemy and blocking and just doing your strong attacks and learning your strong attacks. And that's what you need to do, just learn it bit by bit. And just only limit yourself to those 2 attacks and just focus on those. And then gradually build yourself up. It's the best way. It depends on the player as well, the character you use. And even now, I haven't really learned. I still just use strong attacks or only medium attacks. Only Street Fighter 0 I started doing a bit more combos, so I got more confident. When you're confident enough that it's muscle memory and you remember the basics without even thinking about it, then you move on to the next step. But until then, just keep on the basic steps. And also, the most important thing is you need one of these. You need an arcade stick. You can't do it. People play with a controller, but it's so much better with an arcade stick. I always recommend having an arcade stick if you're going to get into them properly. And it is off-putting because using an arcade stick, I think the main problem people have is how to hold it. And I've kind of adapted it. So I've learned from, I have to put it in the comments or something because I can't put his name. I think it's NY New York arcade sticks. There's a guy on YouTube which I learned how to hold arcade stick with, and I recommend that. I'm gonna have to put in the comment and description because that video is really good. But I've adapted it in my own way. I've hold it slightly different, but you've got to find your favourite style of holding it. You've got to figure out, because it is very weird. Yeah, how do I hold arcade stick? Most people. I'll switch the camera now and just do my basic like touch on it. This isn't the best angle, but it's what you're gonna get. So most people when they first get arcade stick, they hold like this, and this, and it's not natural. You want to like. There's two ways people do it. Well, there's a lot of ways, but two ways I do it is like you have like your pinky and this finger like that, and you cup it and you go around like that, and you don't want to put any pressure and hold it. You just want to have it like light. You're not actually gripping it at all. You're just having it. You just placing your finger like hand ready like that. So there's no like actual strength put into it. You just rest in it, and that's all you're doing. And you're usually using your thumb. So when you're like moving back and forth, you're just moving your hand like lightly. You're not actually gripping it and doing that. You're not doing that. You just lightly just tap it. You're just lightly tapping and pushing your hand like that. You don't have to like grab it and move it around. You just like push, push, push. That's what you need to do. When you're going up, you're using your thumb, pushing your thumb in and up, and then down. You're bringing these hands down like that. This is why it's natural to have it like this, because you can easily just like push it back with the top of your hand and then push this forward for up. It's much better than doing this, and it's just awful. But I switch between this, or I just do that. I just like have like this. It's not the best angle. I'm sorry for the angle, but it's like you just kind of pull it in like that. And sometimes I just do it like that. I don't actually have my finger like that, and then I just literally push, push. It takes a while to get used to this, but it's normally using your fingers at the top and your thumb. Your thumb is used quite a lot, like pushing your thumb. I think the most difficult is the diagonal up, because you're sort of moving, you're kind of like moving this part into it. So this is your main thing. You want to try and get used to this movement stick. Once you're getting into that, it's much easier to pull off like the quarter circles. There's a lot of issues people have is they go too far up and then they start constantly jump and they go, I can't use arcade stick because I'm constantly jumping my character because you've accidentally inputted up too much. This is where you need to fix your where you hold it. You shouldn't have that issue. Another thing with when you're pressing the buttons, you don't want to rest your hand on it. You kind of want your hand off it, like playing a piano. So you can just go between like that. You don't really want to have it rested all the time because it limits you. You just want it above. You want to kind of have your hand not on the actual stick itself, just above it, and you want to just move it around. It's easier. But I recommend the May Flash arcade stick for beginners, just because it's good quality. And if you can, get the Elite version, because you get the Japanese parts, which are much better. The Japanese stick and the Japanese buttons are a lot better. There's a big difference in like just feeling when you do that. I still haven't tried this on a PS5 yet, so I don't know. It should work on a PS5, but I don't know because I play all my fighting games on PS4 because they're 2D. You don't need the PS5 power, so all my fighting games on PS4. The Street Fighter 6 PS5, so you have to look it up, make sure. But the official Street Fighter 6 one, if there is one, is probably good because it's Ori and they are good sticks, but they're more expensive. This is the cheapest one you're going to get for good quality. But you want to get one of these, you want to get into fighting games. And like I said, focus on movement, focus on guarding. And then you want to focus on just like, if it's Street Fighter, you got your light punch, light kick, medium punch, medium kick, heavy punch, heavy kick. And I just focus on heavy punch, heavy kick. And that's it. And then one time I might go, right, I'm just going to focus on these two. And just focus on two. And that's what I'm going to do. And when I'm confident about these, then I'll move on to more, trying to figure out how to play more. But at the moment, I'm having a lot of fun just doing these two and just blocking. When you learn how to block enemies and read them, that's really fun. When you like, because just learning the personalities of every enemy. I'll move up. So when you're like learning the personalities of a character, it's really interesting because, like, for example, when you're fighting Guile on Street Fighter, he tends to do a backflip move when you jump attack. So it's each character you fight has a different personality, which forces you to learn a new way to fight, which is great. For example, when you're fighting Blanca, you normally, well, I'm talking about old Street Fighter 2. They're probably different personalities now. They probably changed them. But on old Street Fighter, when you're fighting Blanca, he normally does this like forward dash into you, so it forces you to like block, medium block. Some enemies they would do like a jump kick and then a bottom kick, so it's forcing you to do a medium block and a low block to get both in. And then when you're doing that, you start going into muscle memory, and then you just naturally are blocking better if you're actually reading the enemy and trying to figure out the enemy, not just trying to spam through it, and you actually understand each enemy. One of the things I would say is crouch guard. Don't move around loads. When you're first starting, just crouch guard. Because, yeah, I know you don't want to guard all the time because they grab you, but when they do, like, the grapple damage, say if you're just constantly guarding, yeah, they're going to grab you sometimes, but the damage they do from grabbing is much less than if they've got a full combo in. So it's better to get grabbed than getting, like, 8-hit combo on you. So that's why it's better just to be blocking all the time, rather than trying to dash around and jump. And don't jump and kick all the time. That's a beginner's mistakes. Always jump attack, because you're just open to getting punished from an uppercut all the time. And you learn that because if you fight in Guile on the old Street Fighter, if you're just going to jump attack every time, he'll do a backflip and just counter it. You're like, it's impossible. Yeah, because you're just using one technique. You're trying to jump attack. It teaches you to learn other ways to approach fighting. So you want to get out of that habit of just jump attack all the time and only use it when you can. The most biggest focus first is guarding, learning to guard, and that's what I say. Just start with guarding, and because your approach is not to beat it, when you play it, don't think, well, I'm playing it to beat the arcade mode. I'm playing it to learn and get better. So sometimes I'm like, right, I'm gonna play it and just guard and just learn to guard, and then that's it. And I'm just like fighting one enemy in like 10 minutes, just fighting the same guy, and I'm going to lose, but I'm just trying to learn guarding. It's better to do that learning, not on training mode, but actually just playing it and trying different approaches, because you're fighting an AI which is actually trying to beat you instead of training mode. Training mode is good when you're a pro, trying to learn the best ways of doing special moves. When you're a beginner, I think it's better to learn just arcade mode and just learning ways and focus on certain techniques, rather than training mode straight away, because that's what people go, right, go on training mode, learn this, constantly do it. And that is boring because you're just fighting nothing. You're just fighting a statue. You want to have a bit of fun. So for a complete beginner, just playing arcade mode and doing basic techniques is so much more fun. So yeah, that's how I approach it anyway. When I'm playing them more and I get more ideas and I learn new things, I'll do another video on what my current status is at learning fighting games. But I'm learning much slower than someone else because I'm obviously rotating my skill games, so I'm trying to learn shmups as well, so you know, it's going to take me much longer than someone else. And it is good to have like a sparring partner who's the same level as you, so you can learn together, which I don't until now. I might get someone who's going to train or practice with me. It'd be great because then we're the same skill level, so we can actually learn the techniques properly. It is good to have that. I'm going to end it here because it's already 23 minutes. I didn't even get to eat this sweet. Oh well, trust me, it's amazing. Only in Japan, only in this area as well. It's like a local sweet. Of course, if you want coffee, always need coffee. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you've got any other advice on fighting games, then yeah, put them in below. But that's my approach to getting into fighting games as a beginner, and still a beginner, so it might change. I'll see you next time.